October 1347. "12 merchant ships dropped anchor in Sicily, in the south of Italy. No merchant stepped off, and no cargo was unloaded. Only corpses lay scattered, with a few men gasping their final breaths." Over the next few years, the plague brought by these ships killed hundreds of millions. It sowed terror in every corner of the continent. Except for one small village. A place that successfully resisted the greatest plague in history. But how? In the 6th century, in the Roman Empire, a strange disease appeared. It caused high fever, exhaustion, and large swellings on the body. It swept everywhere, killing tens of millions before fading away. It was the first time humanity faced the horror of the plague. Centuries later, the pathogen never truly disappeared. It lurked in Central Asia, waiting for the right moment. In the 13th century, as trade routes exploded, the plague spread globally. It followed the ships across the world. By 1340, it reached Europe from the Black Sea. It began a dark era, known as the Black Death. Nearly 200 million people, a vast portion of the world's population, were lost to history. For centuries, the origin remained a mystery.
Most Europeans believed it was divine punishment for human sins. They sought forgiveness through prayer,
or by self-flagellation to beg for mercy. Others believed it was poisonous air, or miasma. They thought avoiding this air would keep them safe. The wealthy carried bags of herbs to mask the scent.
The poor used rags to cover their mouths.
Doctors wore bizarre outfits to protect themselves. They covered themselves completely and wore bird-like masks. The masks were filled with herbs to filter the air. This was the idea of Charles Delorme, a 17th century physician. He believed the beak filtered the air before it reached the lungs. But these measures were ineffective. The plague continued to spread. It wasn't until the late 19th century that Alexander Yersin identified the cause. A dangerous, rod-shaped bacterium.
It disables the immune system by attacking white blood cells.
Once the defenses are gone, the bacteria multiply rapidly.
Initially, people blamed rats.
But scientists later found the true culprit, the flea. When a rat died, the flea moved to a new host. And rats lived right among us. It also spread through contact with the dead. Infected people developed red swellings. These swellings would leak blood and pus. Followed by fever, vomiting, and severe pain. Death usually followed within days.
The Black Death haunted Europe for 4 centuries.
But some places were spared.
In 1665, the plague returned to London. It was a massive outbreak. London became the epicenter of the crisis.
15% of the population died in one summer.
At night, the sound of carts echoed through the city, collecting the dead for mass graves.
King Charles II fled to Oxford.
Those who could afford it fled the city.
Only the poor remained.
Parliament ignored the crisis.
Quarantine was the only measure.
Families were locked in their homes for 40 days.
Guards ensured no one escaped. Doctors delivered food to them.
The conditions were terrible.
And unsanitary.
Today, we are familiar with quarantine.
But in the 17th century, it was a death sentence.
After 40 days, few survived.
The government's response was hopeless.
Meanwhile, trade continued. The plague reached Eyam, a small village in Derbyshire.
In late August 1665, a shipment of cloth arrived from London.
George Vickers, a tailor, opened the chest.
The cloth was damp and full of fleas.
He dried it by the fire.
The heat released the fleas, which bit him.
The village was terrified. Vicars died within days.
Within a month, 5 more villagers died. By autumn, entire families were wiped out.
In December, the cold slowed the deaths.
But when summer returned, the plague came back.
The village was in despair.
Their only hope was the new rector, William Mompesson.
The church was the center of the community.
Mompesson was a pillar of strength.
He had been there for 2 years.
He was loved by all. But he was dismissed for opposing the king's law.
The villagers stood by him.
But in the crisis, they turned to Mompesson.
He didn't know how to stop the plague. He sought guidance from the former leader.
On June 24, 1666, the church bell rang.
The 2 priests announced a bold plan.
They would quarantine the entire village.
No one supported this.
They knew it meant death by plague or starvation.
But a local nobleman agreed to help.
She provided food for the village.
Food was left at the village boundary.
Villagers left money in vinegar to pay for it.
Faith became their only comfort.
They believed only prayer could stop the plague.
And they could die without spreading it.
The plan was implemented.
Each family stayed in their home.
The dead were buried in their gardens.
Not in the churchyard. Church services stopped.
It is beautiful here. We should come back next spring.
Yes, the flowers are lovely.
They kept their distance.
The first 2 months were hard.
In July, 56 people died. Some tried to escape. Others stayed and prayed.
Faith was their only hope.
Emmeline Shire, a 20-year-old girl.
Her fiancé, Roland Torre, lived nearby.
They lived across from the tailor.
The great sickness claimed her entire family.
Roland risked everything to see her.
But she refused to see him. My foreigner.
They met in the woods instead.
They sat far apart. One day, she was gone. Roland found her grave.
The village was filled with sorrow. Some survived miraculously.
Like Elizabeth Hancock.
Her family was infected.
Her children were gone.
Her husband died. She buried them herself.
She survived.
A glimmer of hope.
Marshall Howe's story was even stranger.
He survived the plague.
He buried the dead for money. He stole from the dead. He worked tirelessly amidst the overwhelming tragedy. But he never got sick.
Mompesson was exhausted.
He walked the hills with his wife.
She passed away the following day.
He was devastated. But the plague was fading.
By autumn, deaths slowed.
The last death was in November.
By winter, it was over.
But what ended the nightmare?
Stories of survival spread.
Some moments were deeply unsettling.
Were they true?
How many survived?
The mystery remains.